Welcome back to Normal Island. I hope you had a great start to your week. I mean, it's only Monday, so there's still the rest of the week to go. I'm Curtis Daly, and I'm joined by the wonderful Sarah Dalal. Sarah, how are you today?
Hi, yes, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm okay. It feels like it's been a while since I've hosted, actually, and I don't know why. Maybe it has been.
I don't think it's
Um,
been that long,
no,
but
I'm just
yeah,
missing it. That's
I'm
why.
glad it's good to be here.
It's good to be here. Now, before we start, I just want to give a huge thanks to one of our regular viewers, Zeke Dabist, who generously dropped 70 Turn Left memberships on our broadcast of Lewis's interview with Carla Denyer. It truly means the world and proves that we have the best audience. So thank you so much for that. Incredibly generous stuff. Now, coming up on tonight's show, we'll be unpacking, Israel cuts off humanitarian supplies to Gaza as it seeks to change ceasefire deal. Misleading headline given by Sky News surrounding a supposed Hamas rejection of Israeli requests, and a pro-Palestine documentary wins at the Oscars. Now, before we start, as ever, make sure you like the stream. Please keep the comments going as we will be responding to them later on in the show. We're also pushing towards 20,000 subscribers, so that's our short-term goal. So if you hit the subscribe button, if you're not already, you can help us get there and tell everyone about Turn Left. Tell your friends, tell your family, make sure everybody knows. Now, on to our first story. Israel has cut off all humanitarian aid to Gaza, blocking food, water, and medicine, just as ceasefire negotiations with Hamas hit a wall. The Israeli government claims this is about pressuring Hamas to release more hostages, but the reality is far uglier. This is collective punishment, plain and simple. Israel is using the starvation of over 2 million people as leverage to force Hamas into accepting a rewritten ceasefire deal that removes Israel's requirement to withdraw troops from Gaza. This is a direct violation of the original ceasefire framework, where humanitarian aid and troop withdrawal was supposed to go hand in hand. Even before this, UN agencies warned Gaza was on the brink of famine. Now, with every aid truck blocked, hospitals already collapsing, and water supplies drying up, Gaza faces what UN officials are calling a man-made catastrophe. The UN Human Rights Office has been clear using hunger as a weapon amounts to a war crime, yet Israel is doing exactly that, weaponizing food, medicine, and survival itself to force political concessions. Let's be clear. This isn't about hostages. It's about Netanyahu's government trying to sabotage a ceasefire because his far-right coalition partners want this war to continue at all costs. International pressure is building. The UN Secretary General has called for immediate resumption of aid and warned that punishing Gaza's civilians for Hamas's actions is illegal and immoral. But Israel, with cover from its Western allies, is once again testing how far it can go before the world does more than just wring its hands. Sarah, Israel claims this aid blockade is all about freeing hostages, but starving 2 million people doesn't free anyone. It's about breaking Gaza's will to resist. How much of this is really about hostages, and how much is about forcing Gaza into submission by any means necessary?
I mean, it's definitely about forcing Gaza into like a corner. When you weaponize aid, then that's a clear indication of imperial government. And so, like the manipulation of humanitarian aid, I think, is a bargaining chip. I don't think that's actually unique to Israel. It's something that's a hallmark of imperial governance amongst the global south considerably. If we look from Iraq to Yemen to Venezuela, it's something that's consistently happened as like this political compliance. How can we make people comply with things that we want, where we have to weaponize the things that they need? Um, so when you've got Palestinians' political structure already in a dire situation, these are people that don't have a lot. Remove more from them, and then yeah, you position yourself or posit yourself as someone who's a little bit more powerful. But I think that what's underlying all of this, the fact that Netanyahu definitely just wants to grip onto power. So how is he going to do that? He's going to try and prolong this war as much as possible. So I think that's what's at the heart of it.
Mm-mm. I mean, starvation as a weapon is banned under international law. You know, that's not an opinion.
Mm.
It's a documented
No.
war crime, and yet here we are. But when you look at how Israel is blocking food, water, and medicine to extract political concessions, it's time to stop pretending, right? That this is just tough negotiating, and call it for what it really is.
Yeah, absolutely. No, completely agree with you. Cutting off humanitarian aid isn't just immoral, it's a clear breach of international law under the Geneva Convention. So when it explicitly prohibits collective punishment and then the Israeli government is deciding to go ahead and do that, it kind of just fits into the legal and political definition of a genocide. So no one can sit here and denounce that. And the fact that there are still people who try and denounce that, I think is problematic. So but I also think we have to really interrogate the fact that we've got an entire global system that's enabling this as well. Sorry, I don't know if I'm lagging. I think I might be.
I think we might have slight
but yeah,
choppy
so
audio.
we've got an entire global system that's enabling it. Is it lagging?
Just a tad. I mean, I don't think we want to try and turn Wi-Fi back on if that's going to fuck everything up again, but it's been quite an evening, hasn't it, of this tech issues. Are we back on?
It's been terrible. Is it working?
I can hear you.
Is it lagging?
And you're still here, yeah.
Can you see me?
I can see you.
It's lagging heavily. I know, it's so risky.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm
just
going to
carry
try
on.
and go with it now. I feel like it's sorted itself out slightly. But yeah, what I wanted to say was that there is a complicity of the entire global system that enabled this genocide to happen. And I think that there is a complicity in protecting it too. So yeah, the Israelis' brutality is lagging heavily. I can't cope. It's lagging.
Is this your newest phone you're using? Oh, apparently it sounds a little bit better now, I'm hearing. And yeah, it wouldn't be turned off without tech issues. It wouldn't be, would it? I'll tell you what we'll do is we're going to move on to our second story. If you want to try and sort it out, if you come back to me and let me know if it fixes it. Terribly sorry about this. Again, it's what happens when you're on a shoestring budget. We really one day will have a proper software to keep this going. Now, let's go on to our second story. Can find it. It is the ad. I tell you what, before we move on, we want to show you something. Actually, we've got a video for you. It's really interesting. It's a new initiative we're doing. It's about 2 minutes long. As that plays, we're going to sort out our tech issues. But if Mr. Producer, you want to run the video, and we'll see what we can do. Let's go.
The more we know, the less likely we are to tolerate tyranny. The far right knows this. That's why they spend so much time trying to control the media and how we connect with one another. So we're asking for your help. From fascists in the streets to heads of state, the far right was getting organized across borders.
Podríamos llamarnos una internacional derechista.
Fueled by the super rich, it's not just money that they're burning.
We are going through something in the scale of industrial revolution. The world order is changing.
We are living in a time where extremisms are being fanned.
Elon Musk, everybody knows that he's a problem.
So what can we do about it? From the climate catastrophe to economic misery, we know that the solutions to the many crises we face today will come from dialogue and decency, not more walls and weapons. For over 50 years, New Internationalist has been at the forefront of independent media for social change and global justice.
The New Internationalist comes from a tradition of trying to impose a little bit of humane thinking on the world, to be part of a conversation, to prevent, absolute moral relativism and cynicism.
We know that our readers take action, whether it's joining protests, signing petitions, donating to causes, or making changes in their personal lives. But radical, independent media like ours costs money, and that's why we need your support. Your donation will directly fund our reporting into the rise of the global far right and the social movements working towards real change. It will help our network of journalists bring you fresh perspectives that the mainstream media sidesteps.
I think that the genocide in Gaza has really laid bare the inherent racism in the Western mainstream media.
And the tools to change the world for the better.
At the end of the day, there is actually human cost to this, and we have to remember that.
We have no billionaire backers, no media moguls, and no corporate ads. As one of the world's biggest media cooperatives, we're proud to be co-owned by our readers. We know that if we work together, a better world is possible.
The only way today to beat fascism globally is a global solidarity.
Help rewire the world. Fund journalism that sparks change.
So why did we show the ad? To build solidarity and unity, we will be showing ads from other left-wing organizations. No exchange of money. This wasn't paid for. Because at Turn Left, we believe that we need a leftist ecosystem to take on the establishment and the right-wing capture of the media. So we've spoken to different organizations, and you're going to see, bigger and smaller content creators with ads running on our show, because I think that's what's really important. The ethos of Turn Left is obviously we want to be big. We'd love to have 1 million subscribers, but I don't think you can take on the forces against us when you want to replace one sort of homogenous thing with another. You need a community of it, big and small. So I think that there should be a choice of left-wing media out there, and we're doing our bit by just showing you guys if there's any other organizations you've not heard of. So that was the first of many. We're going to see if we can get Sarah back up. Sarah, you're not there at the moment. Let me see if we can replace you in. Okay. I can see and hear you.
Oh my God, guys, can I just say I'm so sorry? Like it's always me. Why always me?
Why always you, Sarah, isn't
fair?
it? You're just the unluckiest person in the world.
I feel like I am.
Can we get some feedback in the chat to see if this sounds better? Because I think it sounds good on my end. It sounds good to you. It sounds good to me. Okay, I don't want to move on quickly. Do you remember what the last thing you were talking about?
I was discussing, yes, this whole idea of weaponizing aid as imperial governance, and it's something that I think we shouldn't be enabling this, and I think this happens in Western discourse a lot, and in the global north, where people enable the weaponizing of aid as imperial governance, and the manipulation of humanitarian aid as a bargaining chip. I don't think is unique to Israel. It's a hallmark of imperial governance that's happened across the global south, from Iraq to Yemen. And to Venezuela. So I think that's what I was talking about. And I think that what we need to start doing is that we need to stop enabling this in the global north. I think that in the global north, we've enabled a system like this and protected this system. So what are we going to do to interrogate that? I think first, we're still dabbling with the discourse whether we're going to render it a genocide or not, when in actual fact, this is going against the Geneva Convention, and it is, in its legal and political definition, a genocide. So I don't know what the solution is to this. Like, how do we hold someone like Netanyahu to account where all he seems to want is to grip onto his power and prolong this war?
Yeah, I agree. I just wanted you to finish your comment there because we sort of cut you off halfway through before we moved on. But I think we can save to move on to the next story. I just also want to just say that that was the New Internationalist, the ad we played. But of course, if you want to see us grow and hopefully see less tech issues, then please consider supporting us by going to turnleftmedia.co.uk/support. There you can sign up to our monthly Patreon or give a one-off donation. We were going to have comments now, but I think we're going to leave that to the end. So we'll get more comments in and then we'll come back to it. But we're going to move on. So, take a look at this Sky News headline. This week's Sky News ran with the headline, Hamas rejects Israeli request to extend first phase of Gaza ceasefire deal. But wait, they're not the only ones. CNN have done the exact same thing too. Interesting. Sorry, I don't think we have a graphic for that one. So CNN ran a similar headline. I think they've actually changed it now because probably due to public pressure. But the way the media's framed this is that, Hamas has rejected a ceasefire deal. Now, of course, at first glance, it's exactly the kind of headline designed to frame Hamas as the obstacle to peace. A simple story of Israel offering calm and Hamas refusing it. But the reality, as usual, is far more complex. And this headline is a textbook example of how Western media distorts public perception of the Gaza conflict. So what actually happened? The original ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas had two phases. Phase 1, which just ended, saw Hamas release dozens of hostages in exchange for hundreds of Palestinian prisoners, along with limited humanitarian aid entering Gaza. Phase 2 was supposed to start next week. That would mean actual negotiations toward a longer-term ceasefire and a potential withdrawal of Israeli forces from Gaza. What Israel did was propose skipping those next steps and instead extending Phase 1, keeping the limited pause, but with no commitment to broader talks or troop withdrawal. In effect, Israel wanted to delay real negotiations indefinitely. So Hamas didn't reject peace. They rejected Israel's attempts to rewrite the deal on the fly. They said they were ready to move into Phase 2 as agreed, where both sides would have had to negotiate in good faith. That was not a rejection of a ceasefire. It was a demand for Israel to honour the original agreement. Now look at what the media does. By framing this as Hamas rejects Israeli requests, Sky News reverses the roles of aggressor and obstructor. The headline leaves out that Israel was stalling, refusing to start Phase 2, and instead demand a one-sided extension. Hamas's call to stick to the agreed process gets twisted into them being the side rejecting peace. Now, this is a pattern across mainstream Western media. Israeli actions, even when they violate agreements, are framed as reasonable, while any Palestinian resistance, even legal or diplomatic, is framed as obstruction. The effect is powerful. Headlines shape perception far more than actual article because most people never read past the headline. And of course, you can see here studies show over 75% of news links shared online aren't even opened. People react to the headline alone. So when Sky News tells the world Hamas rejects Israeli request, that's the story most people internalize, that Hamas is the side of blocking peace. It's lazy, it's dangerous journalism, and it feeds the larger narrative that Palestinians are inherently unreasonable and violent, while Israel is always extending an olive branch. Sarah, we've seen this pattern for decades. Mainstream media outlets uncritically repeat Israeli government lines, frame Israeli actions as reasonable, and paint Palestinians as the root of all conflict. I mean, why do you think outlets like Sky News so consistently adopts Israeli framing? Is it down to political pressure, ideological bias, or just lazy journalism?
Probably all three, but I think mostly just lazy journalism and this need to spread propaganda. This is like the very definition of propaganda, right? Like selective emphasis and wording. And even if you notice the asymmetry in that language, like Israel requests or proposes, like all of these gentle terms, and I'm sorry, their whole approach has been hostile and abrasive and absolutely disgusting. Netanyahu's been an absolute terrorist. And they kind of frame Israel was like, as though they're doing these humanitarian gestures to free more hostages, and Hamas posits itself as this, well, we're going to reject, like a harsh, very, very negative term. Like language matters, and the way they're manipulating language means that Western media prioritizes Israeli sources and Israeli concerns. Notice how we're always they're saying things like, reporting on like Israeli hostages and their plight, or quotes from Israeli officials, but far less about Palestinian prisoners or the millions of Gazans that are under bombardment. I think it's intentional. And I think we need to start having more conversations about media literacy and what propaganda looks like in the 21st century.
Yeah, because as you're saying, language is really, really important. And you notice even when outlets will report more accurately, right? They'll say, this is what happened, right? The subtle use of passive language when it comes to Palestinians versus Israeli lives is so clear. They'll say that, oh, Palestinian was killed by a rocket, whereas, I mean, a very good, and a lot of people on Twitter have done some fantastic work by comparing it to Ukraine. When Ukrainians are killed at the hands of Russians, they'll say they were murdered by Russians. Okay, and it's true, they were. But when it's, Israelis murdering Palestinians, oh, a rocket just fell out of the sky and no one knows where it came from. And that sort of subtle language tells, and this is nothing new. This has been happening, it's been happening for decades across everything, but specifically when it comes to Israel-Palestine, it's been happening for years. And it's the subtle nod that basically Palestinians aren't people. And I think that is where you get essentially the most craziest Zionist talking points. They feel justified in their, supporting of genocide because people have been conditioned to not see Palestinian lives as worthy or as people. And I don't think it's lazy journalism. I think it's completely deliberate, and it's also extremely racist. So the ideological side is the Zionist part, right? Although racism and Zionism go hand in hand. But I think even the response when it comes to refugees, how the establishment reacted when we talked about Ukrainian refugees versus Palestinian refugees, that is just straight up racism if you want to accept one or not the other.
Agreed. They completely dehumanise the lives of Gazans and Palestinians, means that you're sacrificing accuracy for immediacy or drama. And that in and of itself is rooted in xenophobia. And you're absolutely right. The way that they report on Ukraine in comparison to the way that they report on Palestinians is evident. And you are right. It isn't lazy journalism. These people are smart and it is deliberate. And it does come back to the whole idea that with that 75%, obviously those people are going to take away the fact that Hamas, the ones that are refusing. Let's skew the headlines to completely prime the audience's perception in a way that even the body of the article, if read, might not fully undo. So even if those, I don't know, was it 25%? Yeah, 25% of the people actually go and read that article. Already their perception is skewed. They're going to side with Zionists. And there is a huge danger to that. So I do agree with you. Definitely deliberate.
I mean, as you were just saying there, we know that headlines are more powerful than articles because most people won't read beyond them. And when headlines blame Hamas, it as you just said, it primes the public to accept Israeli escalation as inevitable, justified. I mean, how dangerous is this kind of headline manipulation? And how does it help manufacture consent for Israel's ongoing attacks? Or people beyond that, I mean, are people waking up to the manufactured consent from Israeli propaganda and people aren't buying it anymore?
Do I think that people are waking up? No, because I still feel like people are having conversations about whether this is a genocide or not, or that if are still questioning whether Palestinians should have the right to their own land, or that this is, just colonialism at its finest. Like there are still so many misunderstandings and so much polarization around this whole topic that people still find it quite contentious to talk about. And it is because sensational headlines distort reality and they hinder constructive dialogue. I'm not seeing enough constructive dialogues happen. I'm seeing a dangerous rhetoric be put in front of our screens and written in these headlines. And it does kind of create this cartoonish view of good guys, bad guys, when it's actually so much more nuanced than that. So when headlines consistently paint one party as the villain, irrespective of facts, then it completely dehumanizes that side and the supporters that come along with that.
I think what we're going to do is we will do the comments at the end so we can get more of it in. But I'm going to move on, and obviously we're moving quite quickly this show because it's all kind of interconnected. It's basically all about Palestine. So I think it's ended up becoming kind of one giant story. So we're going to move on to our final story, and then when we do that, we'll go to your comments. No Other Land is a 2024 documentary directed by Bassel Adra, Hamdan Balal, and Yuval Abraham, created by a Palestinian-Israeli collective of 4 activists. The film is framed as an act of resistance in the ongoing pursuit of justice amid the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. The film won Best Documentary at the Oscars.
And the Oscar goes to No Other Land.
Thank you to the Academy for the award. It's such a big honor for the 4 of us, and everybody supported us for this documentary. About 2 months ago, I became a father, and my hope to my daughter that she will not have to live the same life I'm living now, always fearing settlers' violence, home demolitions, and forest spill displacements that my community, Masafir Yatta, is living and facing every day under the Israeli occupation. No other land reflect the harsh reality that we have been enduring for decades, as we call on the world to take serious actions to stop the injustice and to stop the ethnic cleansing of Palestinian people.
We made this film, Palestinians and Israelis, because together our voices are stronger. We see each other. The atrocious destruction of Gaza and its people, which must end. The Israeli hostages brutally taken in the crime of October 7th, which must be freed. When I look at Bassel, I see my brother, but we are unequal. We live in a regime where I am free under civilian law, and Bassel is under military laws that destroy his life and he cannot control. There is a different path, a political solution without ethnic supremacy, with national rights for both of our people. And I have to say, as I am here, the foreign policy in this country is helping to block this path. And can't you see that we are intertwined? That my people can be truly safe?
No Other Land should be on Channel 4 at 11:45 p.m. tomorrow, so it's definitely a must-watch. Now, I don't think it's surprising that this win led to backlash, with the Oscars being accused of anti-Semitism. Fuck you, anti-Semitic, anti-Israel Hollywood filth. That was a tweet from American writer John Podhoretz. Now, the funniest part of this is what he said just 45 minutes earlier. So far, this is the best Oscars I think I've ever seen, and I've been watching since 1971. So it's quite the change there. Now, others have also weighed in on the award. Tali Goldshaft, who's the marketing and commons for the Americans for Ben Gurion University, she tweeted, "Congratulations to the members of the Academy for opting to give these filmmakers an opportunity to proudly echo Hamas's terrorist talking points upon the stage, to plenty of applause by the ignorant and shallow-minded Hollywood elite. Shame on you." Israel Bakar, who was the Consul General of Israel to the Pacific Southwest, he said this: "If Hollywood is eager to see the truth, I suggest they binge watch the countless hours of footage Palestinians themselves recorded, slaughtering entire families, kidnapping the elderly and infants, and committing every crime." Now, I don't actually remember seeing that. I do remember seeing Israelis film themselves committing war crimes, going into people's houses and stealing their stuff, wearing women's underwear after they've just evicted Palestinian women from their houses. In fact, the IDF have given so much evidence to the UN, the ICJ, for their own recording of the genocide. Now, this headline from Politico reporting on the Oscar win is also very interesting. Controversial Middle East documentary wins Academy Award. Controversial? I mean, why is that? Why exactly is it controversial? Sarah, the Oscars are now anti-Semitic. I just want to get your reaction to the documentary winning the award, and your reaction to the backlash it's faced.
I mean, it's incredible that they're winning an award. I think, obviously, it's amazing. The Oscars, I don't think, is a site of liberation. I'm going to put that out there. I don't want to be like really pessimistic. They are a corporate managed like spectacle, but centering Palestinian voices in this is so mandatory because we're going to force the conversation beyond just representation. We're going to interrogate the root causes of settler colonialism, apartheid, and imperialism. All very, very important conversations. But the responses, I can't say I'm surprised. This is exactly what they do. They always collapse Zionism into Judaism. And I think that's a consistent political move and not a cultural fact. Like the heart of every smear campaign that's happened where people attempt to speak out against the genocide is always conflated with being anti-Semitic when there's an inherent difference between Zionism and Judaism. So I think we can't keep conflating these things, and we can't keep silencing Palestine and shielding empire. And I think that's what people are trying to do every single time people do the smear campaign. It isn't just about protecting Israel; it's about protecting a broader system of Western imperialism that Israel serves. So by framing pro-Palestinian advocacy as this inherently anti-Semitic move, I think A, silences Palestinian voices, and B, hinders the movement as well. So yeah, a chilling effect, I think, across progressive movements. So yeah.
I mean, it's the absurdity of the claims, which is, I think, what you notice there is that they won't address any of the actual points, right? When one of the directors was up there saying, look, as an Israeli, I enjoy certain rights that my friend doesn't have. He's under military occupation, I'm not. And you don't get anyone refute those points. It's almost like they have to be so over the top and absurd to kind of counter any sort of narrative. Like, so if they would try to counter the points that, you know, we make when it comes to the apartheid state of Israel, then I think people focus on that and the detail. When someone says something so crazy and outlandish, people then focus on that and you forget about the real discussion. It's almost like, I think they're so deliberate in that because they want you to think about the crazy stuff they're saying rather than the actual arguments put forward. I mean, is that something you agree with, or do you actually think all these people are just that deranged? Now, I don't get me wrong. I know some Zionists are incredibly deranged. But do you think they're all like that? Or do you think that there's some sort of method in really going extreme in their rhetoric?
That's a really good question, and it probably is a bit of both. I think some of them are methodical, but some of them probably aren't smart enough to be that methodical. I think it very much is a case where I don't know. In the face of actual anti-Semitism, I'm like, this isn't that. Like, how are we getting confused here? And if anything, I think what they're doing, whether intentionally or unintentionally, is that they are criminalizing solidarity. So they are criminalizing and delegitimizing any effective solidarity with Palestinians every single time they try to shift or manipulate the narrative to be under this anti-Semitic umbrella. And I'm absolutely against anti-Semitism, obviously, but this is us calling out Zionism. And every single time you tell us, oh, please stop doing that, you're being anti-Semitic, you're saying we can mourn Palestinians quietly, but we cannot name the system that's killing them, and you certainly can't organize against it. That's what they do, whether that's in a methodical manner or in an unintentional one. So yeah. So I think there's been a lot of bad faith accusations.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the modus operandi of them, though. That's their whole vehicle. It's to be bad faith, of course.
Yeah.
But I think there's a sort of a quiet justice here. It's not much, but in the context of the BBC pulling their documentary due to pressure, that this documentary won an Oscar. So I think in that way, it's a nice little fuck you to the BBC. And it's quiet justice. It's not anything big, but
it is quiet justice. But you know, I'm very critical of the Oscars anyway. So I do think there is a performative aspect to these wins. And this is maybe just me being devil's advocate, but is this maybe possibly, and I think it's great to have Palestinian voice in the forefront, and I'm very happy this win has happened, but is this an attempt to, by liberal cultural elite, to cleanse themselves of complicity? Like, hey, look, we have given Palestinians something, be grateful. Like, and that's, I think it's fair for me to be paranoid, because every single time something's happened, something else comes as a result. And they're like, no, like we're going back on our promise, or look at what we've done for the Palestinians, show our solidarity. But actually, you've spent decades demonizing Palestinian resistance, the erasure of their history, and upheld Israeli propaganda. So I think it's a great win, a small one, but a great one nonetheless.
I think
But I
that's a
do
really
question it
good. It's a
slightly.
really good point you made there, and it's very good to see Palestinian voices. It's good to see that a Palestine documentary is winning Oscar awards in the Oscars. But yeah, there is some kind of a performative aspect where the Hollywood elite are sort of washing their hands a little bit, or you know, they're saying, "Well, I clapped for it," you know. So you kind of have to take it with a pinch of salt, right? You have to, you know, that the Oscars isn't some kind of anti-racist organization. It's about film and TV entertainment. That's what it is, isn't it? Really. But I think it's good to be mindful of that. So I thought that was a really good point. I think we're going to wrap up the stories there, but that's definitely not the end of the show, because as promised, I said we will go to your comments. So if we can bring it up, and I want to introduce you, our producer, Callum.
Hello.
Joining with us. How are we?
I am here. I'm all right. I'm here over the microphone. Just hearing you talking about the Oscars there. Sarah saying about that you're critical of the Oscars. My criticism of the Oscars has grown after Vengeance Most Foul, Wallace and Gromit didn't win the Best Animation. I was very disappointed. I was face to face with Nick Park in Preston only a week and a half ago, and was very disappointed to see him not taking home the Oscars. That was a very legitimate criticism. Just before we get started, just to our wonderful colleague Cog, I've seen a bit behind the scenes tonight, and I can personally attest that Sarah, Curtis, and Cal, thank you, have done amazing putting on a show for you all tonight. They overcame so many problems. It's been another day of technical. What's the word I'm looking for?
Technical adversary.
That's the one, behind the scenes. But we're here, and we are in true show must go on fashion. We are ploughing ahead. But yeah, thank you for bearing with us tonight, guys. Big shout out to Andy as well, who's gifted one turn left membership. We really appreciate that. Thank you so much. So Martin made a good point, and I think people seem to still forget this. You know, Hamas has committed war crimes, but that does not justify or excuse years of oppression. And I think when people are talking, particularly on an international stage, you know, thinking of world leaders and others, about how best to move forward with dealing with what's happening in Gaza at the moment, I think people, you know, they still like to talk about October 7th, but they forget everything else that's gone on. And most people acknowledge that Hamas have committed war crimes and have done terrible things. But that doesn't excuse what Israel have done.
Yeah, and I think what these people don't understand when they try and defend all the actions of Israel and say, but on the 7th of October, these heinous things happened. And you think, well, everything that you've accused Hamas of doing on that day, you've done it 1,000 times over. So where's your justification for that? And I would say to the majority of people who are kind of apolitical, that don't really get it, you know, they're not bothered about anything that's going on. When the 7th of October happened, right, there was obviously like a grace period, shall we say, where most people would have said, okay, what Hamas did was disgusting, and Israel has a right to defend themselves and whatever. Yeah, and that maybe lasted for like a couple of weeks, and then people started to go, right, okay, this is a bit over the top now, and we're looking at, with, you know, the numbers are north of 100,000 Palestinians that have been killed, whereas 700 people were killed on the 7th of October, and people need to realize that the Hannibal Directive was deployed, which means that Israel deliberately killed their own people. Yeah. So I don't think it's even 1,000 people that Hamas killed. I think it's way under 1,000. And to then turn around and say, well, that means we can justify hundreds of thousands of deaths is fucking insane. But of course, we've called this bullshit out for so long.
Exactly.
I do think as well it's worth pointing out just what the conversation that you were both having earlier regarding headlines in media as well, is that it's very clear the way that this has been, the whole ceasefire arrangements have been talked about in the media. You know, you'll have a day where you'll have a headline that says, you know, five Israeli hostages have been released in exchange for 170 Palestinian prisoners. And it's like those 170 Palestinian quote-unquote prisoners, a huge number of them are children whose only crime is throwing stones, you know, and they've not been put on trial. They've not been through a fair justice system. They're not prisoners in the sense that, you know, prisoners in the West would be classed as prisoners. They are, for want of any other term, hostages being held by the IDF, in the same way that Hamas were holding Israeli hostages. And I think the language used when talking about Palestinians in regards to the ceasefire deal is just further proof that the media don't care about Palestinian lives, because, you know, when they're Israeli, they're hostages, but when they're Palestinian, they're prisoners.
Exactly. This is what we were saying earlier. The whole need for media literacy, like it's mandatory.
Oh, looks like we've just lost Sarah again.
She'll be back. It's all right.
Okay. Should we go to another question then, or another comment?
Yeah, cool. So, Andy Carter said, clapping for an Oscar doesn't excuse also clapping for a genocide. What do you make of that one?
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, it said it's all performative. You know, it's very easy to sit there and clap for an Oscar. But like, what are you doing about it? And I'm not expecting some celebrity to start going and being, you know, Mr. International World Peace person, but call it out. Oh, we're back. We're back. You okay?
I'm okay. Is it?
Yeah, you're back.
You're back now, but I don't know what happened there. It's been a crazy one. I think we've Oh, she's frozen now. I mean,
but yes, it was horrific seeing the you know, when Netanyahu went to the US and the big round of applause he got for attending Congress. Although, in fairness, that wasn't the attendees at the Oscars, but even so. Yeah. Okay. Just in relation to the speech that was given, George Bodley has said, well spoken, many Israeli Jews condemn their country's actions of genocide, which again is why you're 3 times more likely to be booted out of the Labour Party if you're Jewish than of any other background, because for anti-Semitism.
I've always said that Zionism is incredibly anti-Semitic because it targets certain Jews. They say you have to think this particular way, which is very, very racist. And of course, a lot of anti-Zionist Jews get caught in that net and are attacked and smeared. And you're absolutely right. I mean, you are more likely to be persecuted inside the Labour Party if you're an anti-Zionist Jewish person. It's fucking insane. Are we back now, Sarah?
I'm scared to talk in case it drops me out. Maybe I need to stop talking. I'm so scared.
What do you make of Natalie's comment then? So social media is the 21st century answer to sharing propaganda. Many will see a news story and look for social media stories to back up the narrative as evidence, but told from multiple mouths.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the thing. Social media has enabled the sensationalism of mainstream headlines. So I absolutely agree with Natalie there. They can skew public opinion so easily, simply just by that 75% who just read the headline and then they go tell a friend and they go tell their family members, oh, you won't believe what Hamas did, or you won't believe what so and so did, or you won't believe what Starr was doing at the moment, although he's doing many questionable things. But when we said this earlier, when headlines consistently paint a certain party as a certain type of way, then they dehumanize that side and the supporters on that side too. So yeah,
I think this ties in this ties in with Simon's comment, actually, because Simon said, I think the public are ahead of this. That's why the mainstream media viewing figures are and readers are plummeting. But I disagree. I don't think the public are getting. I don't think they're getting better at reading past the headline and knowing how people. I think what's happening is people are seeing the headlines, and then, like Natalie says, they're then going to social media to validate and find out whether that headline is true. And what they're finding is there's a load of people on social media who are talking about the headline who also haven't read the article, which is then it's then hitting home this idea that what was in the headline is actually the story.
Majority of people, especially in this country, are supportive of Palestinians. Like when you poll people, so I do think that when you look at the media apparatus and how pro-Israel they are, there's a disconnect with people's views and what the media is putting out. So I do think that the public are kind of seeing through this. I don't think that's the case with every political thing that the mainstream media says, but you have to also remember that the media in the West, and especially us, have the lowest trustworthy rating. No one trusts the media, so oftentimes it's more when the media tells you something, people kind of like trying to almost think of the opposite. And of course, the problem is that doesn't mean that the media is ineffective. It absolutely is, and it's propaganda. But I do think that when it comes to the issue of Palestine, majority of people do not agree with what the media is putting out. And of course, the question about social media, and that's the last comment, I've always wondered whether social media is a force for good or force for bad, because I feel like things have gotten worse with social media in a lot of ways. And some people say to me, yeah, but the things with social media is it's created spaces for people where they wouldn't have the space before, which is an aspect of it. But at the same time, we were all promised that with social media, we'll be democratizing media and society will move to the left because it won't be corporate media that rules the day. Sorry, but it does, because people talk about how legacy media is dying, and it kind of is, but it also isn't, because legacy media has simply moved to social media. You know, the BBC, Sky, all these outlets still exist. They're just on social media now. And now the problem is we have an issue where we've got the establishment corporate media, and now we've got the right-wing corporate media that owns social media, like Elon Musk. So I think that social media in terms of the media has been far worse. That's been a huge, huge issue. I think she's gone again. But I failed to see how we can properly utilize social media for good. It's a big issue.
Christina said it's not that Western media doesn't care about Palestinian lives. The problem is that mainstream Western media is consciously aiding and abetting genocide. Western media is complicit.
Well, it's probably both, right? You're going to get some corners of the media who just don't care, and other corners of the media which are trying to push the genocide. So I don't think that every single media outlet is going, ha ha ha, we support the genocide, because we know that's not how the media works. Now, of course, there are pressures. The BBC faces pressure from Zionists, but I don't think that's like there's, in every organization there is a handful of Zionists trying to push something. I think it's a bit more complicated than that. So I think it's a mix between bias. It's mixed between not caring and then, of course, yes, absolute complicity.
Yeah, completely agree. Dominique's just suggested to Sarah, who's disappeared again, perhaps convey your point through the medium of interpretive dance.
Maybe that'll go viral, get more traction.
I think we might need that, but I think we should leave it there tonight with those, Curtis. But thanks again to everyone for your comments, and we do like to read them afterwards. And also, if you can, when the live finishes, if you get a chance just to go back onto the replay and leave some comments there, it's always great for you to do that as well, because it helps with the algorithm, pushes it out to more people. So yeah, if you're enjoying the live streams that we do, please comment on them when the replays go up as well, because it helps get them out to more people. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Callum. Yes, thank you so much for everyone who joined in. It's been a bit of a wild one. Of course, we have tech issues almost every single time, but this really kind of disrupted it. But thank you for the usual suspects bearing with us. And of course, I want to thank Sarah, who's not here now, she's left, for joining me. It was an absolute pleasure when she was here. Remember to like this stream, and if you're not a subscriber, hit that button and make sure you hit the notification bell, because we are trying to hit 20,000 subscribers. If you want to see us grow and see less tech issues, then you can head over to turnleftmedia.co.uk/supports. There is a link to our Patreon where you can support us monthly, or follow the other link to give us a one-off contribution. I want to thank everyone who joined in, and we will be back this Thursday at 8 p.m. for Normal Ireland. I'm Curtis Daly, and I'll see you next time.
Support independent media, support social justice that's there on social media. Thank you. Turn left.